you didn't have illustrators anymore working in its other places like newspapers, suddenly they weren't working in publishing either. And so illustrations started to disappear from novels for adults, and then in the 1920s and 1930s, they disappeared from novels for teenagers, until finally we have almost no pictures in our books now at all. And I remember when I was 8 years old, and the first time I was handed a book with no pictures, and I protested, and I said, this sucks. Why no pictures? And they said something to me like, oh, that's good, that's so you can use your imagination. But they were lying, because people did not get imaginations in 1910. What they got was cameras. So thinking about all these things, writing Leviathan, I wanted to do a book that had illustrations. I wanted to do a book that was like a book from 1914, where you could, that was like being a teenager in 1914. So we started with this map, an allegorical map, which I showed an hour ago. And there's two characters. We started by doing portraits of the two characters. And it's all set in this sort of steampunk scenario where one of the characters is the son of the Archduke Ferdinand. So of course he feels this personal responsibility for World War I. And he is taken away in a giant walking tank the night his parents are assassinated. And of course, a walking tank is a steampunk sort of staple. But I really wanted the Germans in my world to have a sort of classic steampunk look with this sort of a giant walking land battleship you can see behind me. And what's interesting is that technologically, it's not as far-fetched as I thought. As I started to do research, my illustrator, Keith Thompson, at one point designed this machine because there was the German scouts are chasing Alec in his Stormwalker. And it's sort of like a cross between a horse and a motorcycle. It's, it's got four legs, just one pilot riding it. And and when I first saw it, I said to Keith, I don't believe in it. It's too fantastic, it's different than everything else we're doing, it's too strange. And he said, really? Because in 1920, there were these Italian mechanics who tried to create a four-legged walking machine. It was for moving around in rough terrain where they didn't have roads, particularly in the vineyards where you have slopes. And they tried to create this wonderful mechanical horse, which is called Il Dobino. I don't know what that means in Italian. It probably means totally stupid. You can see the child is not very happy. It is maybe not the best invention ever. But it does show you that technology can go in different directions. And that the things that we assume about wheels or treads are not necessarily preordained. There was another, when Keith first sends me his art, he sends it in sketch form. And there was one interesting exchange that taught me a little bit about pictures, storytelling in pictures. He sent me, the Stormwalker is traveling across the snow and dragging a big sledge full of cargo. And he sent me this sketch. And I said, it needs to change. It would be better to show from the side. And he said, the side of what? And I said, the side of both of them. And he said, I don't know what you mean. And I said, I hate you. And we started to have a fight. So instead of fighting with him, I made him a diorama. And I said, make it just like this. So this is my beautiful diorama. And you can see that just as sometimes a horse is better than a car, sometimes an illustration is better than a photograph. Photographs are great for catalogs. Photographs are great for newspapers. But if you're writing a novel, an illustration is much better than a photograph, because of course you're not limited to what you can build with your toys. I really like this illustration. There's lots of wonderful little details. Someone carrying fuel and welding them together. Two characters. There's a Tasmanian tiger here. And I love that so many details can come out of a simple, comical, stupid-looking thing that I built. The other character in the book is not an aristocrat, but a commoner. And she's a girl pretending to be a boy so that she can serve in the British Air Navy. Her name is Darren. And of course, many women did serve in the army, in the Civil War, and in the Revolutionary War. There were 2 women in the American Revolution who served in the army. And there was one 19-year-old girl in history who did actually serve in the British Army. Now, the reason why, dressed as a boy, all of these women were dressed as boys. The reason why Darren wants to join is because she wants to fly. And so, of course, when she first presents herself as a boy and tries to get into the Air Navy, what they do with the recruits is send them 1,000 feet in the air. And they send them up in a giant hydrogen-breathing jellyfish. Now, the reason why it's a jellyfish is that Darwin had this stomach condition. And whenever he got into an argument, his stomach would clench and he would have to lie down for like 4 hours. Now, this is a terrible condition to have, especially if you discover evolution, because everyone will argue with you. Fortunately, he had a friend named Huxley who liked to argue, and he was known as Darwin's bulldog, because he would go to the debates and argue with the clergymen and do all the yelling and the shouting that Darwin needed to do. So in my world, Darwin discovered DNA in the 1850s and began to create these animals and creatures and fabricate species. So Origins of Species was a cookbook, so to speak. And Huxley, his bulldog, was an expert in jellyfish. So I wanted the first strange creature that we saw to be made out of jellyfish in honor of Huxley. Here's another creature that the Darwinists used to fight, this sort of half wolf, half tiger. And I like this particular illustration is a great example of the style that Keith has created for this book, which is what I call Victorian manga. It has the complexity of Victorian illustration. It's very fine of line, but it also looks kind of modern and kind of like a Japanese comic book. Here's another illustration of the airship called the Leviathan, after which the ship is named, after which the series is named. It's a 1,000-foot-long zeppelin or airship made from the life threads of a whale. And Darren ultimately winds up serving on it.